So our time is Siyata D'Shmaya, sponsored so generously by the Goodman family, has a schus for a refuah shalema, v'chaya Esther bas nechama, if everyone can have her in mind, in need of a refuah, b'sil shachal yisrael refuah, sanevish refuah seguf, chaya Esther bas nechama should have a full and a speedy recovery, be'ez Hashem, with rachamei shemayim merubim, and Siyata D'Shmaya miyuchedes, l'chol yom vayom. Allow me to start this evening with an unbelievable Maisa. Fantastic Maisa. I shared it recently in Darchei Torah, and one of the Rabbi questioned in terms of Charusis. I then saw it mamish the very next night. Friday night, Lil Shabbos, I was reading the latest edition of Kol B'Ramah, which is the collection of Divrei Torah that comes out of Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein's Beis Medrash. So you have all the Tivchei Yabiyu and the Alein the Shabachs and the Mosam. You have so many Sfarim. Many of those Divrei Torah, fascinating Shilas and Maisalach. Begin right here in a Kunchis that's published weekly. Eytan Ramat El Chanan the Kol B'Ramah. So after hearing that story, I then saw it, the Mamish in print. It's a Maisa that the Heiliger Melech Biederman shared when he visited the Beis Medrash of Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, and it was Toch the Shiva of Rav Simcha Cohen Cook. So you'll hear how Rav Simcha Cohen Cook plays a very interesting role in this Maisa. The Maisa goes back to Ponovich days. Ponovich days when the Heiliger Ponovich Rav Kahneman got up at a Yarchei Kala in Ponovich, and he decided to share a story that when he learned to buy the Chavetz Chaim in Radin, he had a younger Chavrusa. He didn't want to name who that Chavrusa was. You'll see why. He was learning with a Chavrusa. He says, and this Chavrusa was a little bit slow. Poshit couldn't keep up with him. Now, parenthetically, we have to keep in mind that many Gedolei Yisrael have been made, and that the Ponovich Rav was such an Eloi Muflag, such a tremendous Miyuchadik about Kishrin, that many of his peers said he could have been hands down the Gold Hadar, but he was Mavater on being the Gold Hadar, said he could be the one to be Godel Ma'asa Yesim Nosi. He was the one who was Ma'afsher and engendered the binyan of all, not only Ponovich, but so many Batim and Rosh, so many yeshivas, Batim K'niyas throughout B'nai Brak, and of course out Israel. He was a tremendous builder of all the yeshivas that we have today, but he was an unbelievable Eloi. So here he was learning in Radin, a number of years older than a certain Bacher, and he was learning with this Bacher, and he said the Bacher was going way too slow for him. The Bacher was still holding by the Gemara. He was already way into the Rishonim, and then he says, you know what, he's slowing me down, it's staring me. I have to break up the Chavrusa Shav. So I decided one day, that's it, I'm breaking up. And the very next night, he says, I'm learning at a Shau Mucheres, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. He's up there in the Ezos Noshim, in the Radin, in the Chavetz Chaim's yeshiva. And he's learning steiging. There's nobody else up with this Rav Kahneman, the young Yosef Shlomo Kahneman. He's learning by himself in the Ezos Noshim. And all of a sudden, what stares in the middle of his learning, he hears somebody mamish bawling. He hears tears, the most shlish bechi, like he's never heard before. And it stirs him out of his hasmada, and he takes a peek over the railing of the Esus Noshim, and he sees that there's a bocher in the yeshiva who now has his head inside the Yoren Kodesh. And he's mamish bawling, and he's crying, and he's screaming out to Hashem, Eibishter, you know how much I love your Torah. And I was zeicher to this unbelievable Chavrusa. I had Siyata D'Shmaya to learn how this Eloi, this Yosef Shalom Kahneman, I can't keep up with him. I'm way too slow for him. Hashem, I'm davening. Give me Siyata D'Shmaya. Give me the Kishreinis. Let me have the Siyata D'Shmaya that I can keep up. He just dumped me. This Chavrusa got dumped by Rav Kahneman. He says, I wish I could go back and learn with him. And he was so moved, the Ponovich Rav. So inspired, so taken, mamish, a half hour straight, he was bawling, screaming, Hashem, I love your Torah, and all I want is to have these great charusas I could be, and have them go to the Torah one day. And then I waited until the Bacher finished. And he took his head out of the Yoren Kodesh, and I saw that was the charusa that I just broke up with. And I decided, as I Ratzon, to be a Golda B'Torah. Someone who has such a Ratzon, Rachmanis, how can I not have that opportunity? So I told him the next morning, you know what? I'm going to take you back as a Charusa. I says, and I don't know what he davened in that half hour with his head in the Aron Kodesh. But that very next day, he was mamish and on the remench. He was an Odom Achel Legamri. Not only his Asmodo, but his Keshoinus, I learned with him, Becharusa for Tkufa, Arucha, and I saw that he was growing and steiging, unbelievable, and that the now great Gon HaDaran Panovich Arav got up at the Yachid Kalin Panovich and he says, I'm not being Megala, the identity of this Bacher, with whom I learned in Ranim, but I want you to know that he became an Odom Gola B'Torah. When I prepare a shear, I almost always take out his Sfarim, and I look at his Sfarim and I see Yeluyishkeit and Yonishkeit, and his Sfarim when I prepare my Shiurim today. Simcha Kohen Cook was there at that Yarchei Kal. Torah Hivelomanani Tzorach. And he heard the mice and he walks the Panovich Arav home. Stands in front of the door, takes his leg, puts it in front of the door and says, Rabbi, I'm not letting Rav Kahanim and the Panovich Arav into his house until he's Megala to me the identity of that Bacher. Who was that Charusa? Panovich Arav says, no, I'm not being Megala. I'm not being what I don't want to say. He says, no, it's a chizuk. It's a chizuk that he wasn't an Eloi. He wasn't about Kishrin. And then he mamash al yedei the Ratzon and the Chukas Halev. He became a Chochma slave. He wanted it so badly. You got to tell me, I need the chizuk. You see, you can become an Adam Godel even if you're not to that Eloi, that tremendous about Kishrin. He says, I'm not being Megala. He says, the Rebbe, then I'm not letting the Rebbe back into his house. And I refuse to move. Rav Simcha Kohen Cook said, until Rav Panovich Arav revealed to me the identity of that Bacher. So it was a while later, Rav Simcha Kohen Cook got up in a drasha. And he said over this mice in the drasha. And a Talmud of his, Rav Yonah Steinheis, I was inspired. And he walked Rav Simcha Kohen Cook home to his house. And he put his foot in front of the door. And he blocked the door and he says, Rebbe, I'm not letting the Rebbe into his house until he... And he says, no, that wasn't the deal. I could do that to the Panovich. He says, Rebbe, if the Rebbe could do that to the Panovich Arav, I could do that to the Rebbe. And so Rav Simcha Kohen Cook told him, okay. You know that Bacher was? None other than Elchanan Wasserman. Rav Elchanan Wasserman, the Kobeit Shiurim, was that stam slow Bacher. Again, everything is relative. How many people in the world can keep up with the Panovich Arav? He was a regular Bacher. And he cried and he wanted it and he had the Ratzon and he became Hagon Rav Elchanan Wasserman and he wrote the Kobeit Shiurim and the Kobeit Sinyanim and Kobeit. Who doesn't learn the Kobeit Shiurim? Ksuvas, Bavakaba, Babasa, V'chulei, Kobeit Sa'aris and Yevomis. How do you learn Yevomis without a Kobeit Sa'aris? Kobeit Sa'mamorim of Rav Elchanan. How many times it's been reissued? That's the one who wanted it so badly. And that explains a fascinating Medrash Tanchuma in this week's parsha. Peladik Medrash Tanchuma Gevaldig Sefer V'Shola Lo Yesar, quoting the Sefer B'Shem Mordechai, who himself was quoting one of the Friedik Bells of Rebbe's, Amarid Mi Bells, the Heilige Rabbi Yisachar Dov Mi Bells, and the Baal Bells of Rav, who was perturbed, he was disturbed. How do you understand it? Peladik Medrash, Medrash Tanchuma Siman Hey in the beginning of Parashas Korach says, Moshe says to Korach, I says, I don't understand. Look at the Goyim also. They might have different rituals, different imusim, different mannerisms. V'chuli vein kulam eskaptzim b'mayis echad. Anu heilanu el Hashem echad. Torah chas mishmar echad. Amizbech echad. Kohen Gadol echad. And Beis HaMikdash echad. You also, you guys want the Kuna Gedola. Afani wrote sebekach. I also want to be the Kohen Gadol. And I don't get to be the Kohen Gadol. You also want to. So we want to ask the bells. What was his taina? Often he wrote Savakach. Moshe Rabbeinu at first glance was Gorisha. It seems to resonate a shtickle kiddo. It seems to be that he was Makana. So what's the pshat that he says? Gamani wrote Savakach. Moshe the Onam Kolodim. He wanted our in a Kohen's avoda. Explains the bells of Rabbi. Korach, I was jealous of Aaron a Kohen. He got to be the Kohen Gadol. Moshe Rabbeinu turns to them and he says, what do you guys want to be the Kohen Gadol for? Because you want to be charged with the task of the Avodas HaMikdash. What do you think? You're going to be less off because you're not the Kohen Gadol. I'll go with Hashem's plan. Hashem decided there's going to be one Kohen Gadol, and Hashem Yisparach picked Aaron a Kohen. What's the point in being jealous? And what? Therefore what? You know what I tell myself before I go to sleep at night? That as long as I want it, what do we know? We don't have that nusach of ein l'chadam f'nei ratzon that the Chidah, many others write. Our nusach is a Zohar in Parashas Truma. It says, "Hakol tluyin b'avosei," everything is totally in Ratzon. But Hakoponim, what does it mean? Ratzon. Hashem says, if you want something, Shmo darshins the Gemara and Brochus Davav and Aleph. Amisha choshev lasas ma'isa mitzvah avenenos neshev kilu asab. Moshe says, I also want to do it, but you know I'm a mafayis atzmi. You know I comfort myself, and then I want to do it. Hashem sees that if I have a gavaldik ratzon to want to do it, I'm an onus because Hashem didn't pick me. But Hashem's going to credit me as if I did the avodah, because that's how I want to do the avodah. So what do you want, Korach? You think you're missing something because you're not going, oh no, you're not missing anything. Just do your job. But Aaron's going to get so much schar for doing the gavaldik avodah. You'll also get schar if you have a gavaldik starker ratzon, that you want to do the same thing that Aaron HaKohen is doing on a daily basis if you want it. And the only reason you can't do it is because, well, what can you do? You weren't selected. You weren't chosen to be the Kohen Gadol. So that's ein l'chaon is kodem izeh. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu tells himself as well. Amela, you get schar as if you did it. Hashem is mitzari from Machshava L'maisa, the end of the first part of Kedushin. Hashem is mitzari all the Machshava Tavi L'maisa. So Hashem will consider us. It's kilu kiyam the isim apoel. And then kain afatem yicholam the kaim kamoni alachem the kani ba'ora. And there's nothing to be jealous about. And now even when it comes to yes ruchnius, you have Bava Basra the bottom of Chaf Aleph and Aleph the Kinna Seifrim Tarba Chochma writes the Marshan Chedushi Agadas Kinna Seifrim Tarba Chochma. It's a kinna that's allowed and it's a Marba Chochma. But what? It's not Kinnis Chachamim. Zok the Marshan. The higher level is to be a Chacham who's not jealous at all. And like the Yisachadomi bells, Avada, there's no reason to be jealous at all. What do you mean jealous of someone else's ruchnius? You do what you need to do. You're not the Panavitcharav. You don't have his Kishoinis. You're not the Eloi. But if you want it, Hashem's going to go ahead and give you the schar. And sometimes not just in the next world, but even in this world, like Rav Chanan, where Rav Chanan had the Siyata D'Shmaya, and his tefillas were answered. Imams became echad migadolei dareinu. And thus we close with the Gavaldik Imri Yemes, the Baal Imri Yemes, Mamash Ishtel's too, the Solo Yesa to Moedik Izogadi Imri Yemes. Yes, the Lusach of the Zohar is a Kol Tuluyin Bravase. Everything is totally in Ratzon, but the Sprach, it's not coincidental. Dorm Gedolim, what's the Sprach that the Chidah, many Sifrei, Achronim always invoke? Ein Davar L'Chum B'nei Ratzon. Nothing stands in the way of Ratzon. Yes, we have the Gemara and Yuma, Alam and Chesem and Beis, Abol Atar Misayin also. Balatami Poschuno, we have the Gemara Makas Taf Yunim and Beis, B'der Shod Motza Leilech Molichanosim and Atonim and Aviyim, Menaksuve Minayin She, B'der Shod Motza Leilech Molichanoso. If you have the Ratzon, Gevaldik, as Rav Olba says, and Ali Shor Chele Beis, Ratzon Milosh and Ratz, you run in the direction of your Ratzon. If that's where your Ratzon is, then nothing's going to stop. Ein L'chador Neotza. In fact, there, Emre Yemes, it's not true. And he says, look around the world, there are plenty of people who want to become a Golda Hadar, plenty of people who want to be a Tzaddik Hadar, who want to be wealthy. Ein L'chador Neotza. It's not true. So the famous answer to Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim said it is true. It's true when that's your only Ratzon that you have. And Teretz says we think we want something, but we want other things too. We want to be a Talmid Chacham, yeah, but we also want a nice Tesla, and we want to go on vacation to Florida, and we want to go water skiing, and we want to eat in Doma restaurants, and we want to have all that. And we want to have the best of Ruchnius. If that's your only Ratzon, that's what the Chavetz Chaim used to understand. If that's in the Chadov Nei Ratzon, that's not what the Imri Yemes understands. Imri Yemes says, you know what it means? Avada, you don't get everything you want in this world. But when you get up to Shemayim and Hashem's going to say, Kavati to the Torah, you're going to answer Hashem, look, I really wanted to. I was busy. I had to make Parnasa. If you really wanted to, Hashem says, then what? That's going to be Omer L'cha. The Ratzon is going to stand up for you to defend you, and based on Shamayla, Ein L'cha Davar. Hashem's going to say, did you give us much talk? Hashem, I wanted to. I didn't have so much money. Hashem, I wish I had a bigger home. I could have had more guests. I could have done more mitzvahs if I had more money, if I had more opportunities. If you have the Ratzon's going to come to your defense after 120 in Gan Eden Shamayla. That'll be Omer L'cha. Ein L'cha. Don't have Ratzon. Nothing's going to stand up for you more than the Ratzon. And Hashem's going to give you credit for everything. But if you didn't have the Ratzon, then you're in big trouble. If you didn't have the Ratzon to want to be to want to be the tzaddik, to want to be about tzedakah v'chesed v'chulei, then already we're asking for trouble. That's the Heilige Miriames, to have the Ratzon. And what do you see? Not only in the next world, like the Ma'aser Ochana, it can happen even in this world. If you want it and you cry for it, and you really want the tshuka, Pnimis is burning inside your lave, inside your kerev, Mitzvah Hashem, then the tefillos ketaki get answered, and you can become an unbelievable Eved Hashem tzaddik. Go, have a wonderful night. Baruch Hatzlocha, got to run to another chasana. We should know all these simchas and Hashem. Chananya.